Welcome friends to another r/prorevenge video. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Our story of the day is by Destruction Escapist. My employer stole my stuff, so I made him pay for it. I hope this won't backfire, but I believe I did not break any law, so here it goes. Some background first. Since I was a kid, I was fascinated in computers and electronics. During school, I had no social life. I just stayed at home and was learning stuff. I was going to generic high school that should prepare you for university without any specialization, but there were few people with the same interests as me, and our IT teacher was really supportive of us. When I finished high school, I already had a job as a programmer and had a few years of experience in the field. I also was experienced with electronics and even worked on a few contracts for the factory in town, involving creating machines for them. Other engineers came up with an idea how the machine will work. My job was to put their motors, sensor, wire it up, and write programs for the PLC to control it. I moved to a big city and started university, so I lost my programming job in my city. I was going to look for a part-time job while living off my parents' support. Things changed when my friend got an escape game voucher for 5 people for his birthday and took me with him. The escape game had cool magic stuff, like you placed objects in a shelf, and all the pictures in the room fall off the walls, etc. While we were there to solve puzzles, I was mostly interested in these magic things, making theories about how they made them and thinking how I would do it. When the game was over, I saw for a moment their technical room, and at this point I was like, I want to work here. I sent them my CV, and as I was overqualified for the job, I was accepted after the first interview. I was young, naive, and stupid, so they just used me. My hourly rate after tax was the equivalent of $8.50. To put it in comparison, cashiers at big stores here make roughly $6.50 plus benefits. First few months were awesome. I was paid for doing my hobby and the owner loved me, as this previous tech guy, referred to as tech moron now on, was, compared to me, just dumb. I'm not bragging, I swear. He didn't come up with almost any original design, he just found something on the internet and was skilled enough to read the schematics and somewhat copy it. But he had big gaps in his knowledge. Once he told me that I can't build a battery-operated circuit that'll be powered while the battery's charging, as this would cause the battery to explode. When I told them about charging regulators and how it isn't an issue with his phone or laptop, he just told me I was hired to help him and to freak off. Over time, Tech Moron started to realize that I'm just smarter than him and his ego could not handle it. So he decided his only goal from now on was to make my life heck. For example, the owner tasked me with replicating devices they already have in one game, as he wanted to put it into another one. I spent a week just by messaging Tech Moron asking him for the schematics and source code, calling him, and he just never replied. Then I decided screw him. I came up with an improved design and built it. When I was showing it at the next meeting to the owner, who was very happy with it, Tech Moron just yelled at me for not using his design and wasting time on reinventing the wheel. After some time, the owner realized what was going on and hired another tech guy, Tech Senior from now on. But he can't fire Tech Moron as he had all the important source code and designs on his laptop, and because of a bad contract, it wasn't property of the escape game company. Little did we know that in the future, he wouldn't hand over most of the designs and code, and we'd end up rewriting that from scratch. The company was also franchising. We just took a game we already had running, made an exact copy, and installed it in another location. We then provided support while they were paying us license fees, usually a small percentage of their profits. The owner was a typical manager who thought 9 women can deliver 1 baby in a month. Eventually, Tech Senior was made my boss as he had much more experience in electronics, while I was more oriented on programming and on-site support for game masters if something broke. We didn't give a freak about Tech Moron, as at this point, he just showed up once a month, did almost no work, criticized all we did and had working, and went home. Things were going really well, so we hired a few electronic students to help us. The building department, which was making props like a special wooden table that we could hide our magic into, also grew. Things were looking really good until one meeting about a new franchise client. The owner told us what he needs. We, tech guys, talked to the props guys, went over all the requirements, and told them we need 10 weeks for it. Well, 8, but we always accounted for stuff going sideways, as this date will be on the contract. Usual stuff in healthy company. Next week, next meeting. He told us that the client doesn't want to wait and he put 5 weeks in the contract. His reasoning was we're doing the same stuff as before and now have more people, so it'll go faster. We worked hard, like really hard. There were weeks when I just went home for 8 hours to take a shower and sleep for a bit, then went back to the workshop to work on stuff. It was hard, but we managed to finish in time, and I got some sweet money on overtime. But this was a mistake. Now we showed him what he wants is possible. So the next contract went over the exact same deadline crap. More overtime. I remember having almost no social life, just working the whole week, sometimes sleeping at the workshop, and being stressed as heck. Then, every Friday, I just went to a pub with a few friends, totally wasted myself to relieve the stress, and slept through the whole weekend. Then comes a Monday and we start over. Eventually, I went from, I love this job to, I don't give a crap. And I wasn't the only one. Our performance dropped and we started missing deadlines. Did the owner account for it in the contracts? No. Repetition makes perfection. This time you can do it faster, was his reasoning. And he just kept signing more and more contracts, dumping the stuff on us. I remember one meeting when he asked us about the status of Project D as the deadline was next week. Well, we didn't even start working on this as we had our hands full with Project C, which was started later because we didn't finish Projects A and B in time. This is how far it went. Deposits from new contracts were used to pay fines for old contracts. At this meeting, I realized I just had enough. Of course, our job was not only franchising. We had our own games that needed to be maintained, and we were doing all that all the time alongside the franchising heck. What was the biggest issue with all the games was the control software. It was a crap load of simple-purpose scripts driving all the Raspberry Pis and Arduinos in the game, but it had one UI presented to the game master, so he could control all the props in the game, override them, etc. At least in theory. But oh boy, it was buggy like heck. Sometimes not working at all, sometimes you wanted to shine light on an object to give players a hint, but instead it opened doors to the next level, etc. It wasn't universal, simple requests required massive changes, and lots of overrides were not implemented correctly. One day, the owner finally agreed to my demands and allowed me to rewrite all of that. It took me a few months, but I created a universal engine that could handle all the stuff game designers were asking us to do. It was easy to expand, had error protection and recovery tasks. Now, if one prop stopped responding, you just open the debug page and click to restart. This was a game changer, as previously the game master had to switch off the power, and sometimes that wasn't possible during the game. And my biggest achievement, I created an easy scripting language which was used to describe the game workflow. The Game Master now had a crapload of working controls and the option to interrupt predefined tasks and change the flow. But that barely happened, as the game was now almost automatic, and he was just there to give hints. I wasn't comfortable running this software on the Raspberry Pi that was there for the previous control, and I wanted a better hardware for that. My request was always denied by the owner, but the games manager wanted the new software working ASAP. At this point, we were always just testing it from my laptop. So I decided to lend them a few PCs. Some time ago, a friend from a big corporate pulled a crapload of Dell Optiplex workstations from eScrap. They were working fine and had Intel i5 CPUs, 8 gigs of RAM, decent onboard graphics, DisplayPort, USB 3.0, fully working computers. You could buy them refurbished for about $200. The company just had no use for them and nobody wanted to go over selling them, so they just dumped them. I had a stack of 20 of them at home just collecting dust. I took a few of them to my work, and the boss agreed we'll settle it later. So I just emailed a list of all my hardware that was used in the games. 5 PCs, some Wi-Fi routers, old tables, some monitors, and other stuff I collected mostly from e-waste, fixed it, and had no use for it. Of course, I didn't tell them that I got it for free, and was expecting them to pay me for it. Fast forward, I was fed up with the franchising deadlines and got a few job offers that made me realize my real price and that I was an abused young kid in his 20s working for almost nothing. But I was waiting, and the next month, my software was deployed in the remaining games. Tech Moron was out of the picture for a few months now. Tech Senior had some programming knowledge and was able to use my scripting language, but had a very little understanding about the insides of the complex engine I wrote, which was now being developed for over a year. I had results, I was important, and I had demands. I scheduled a meeting with the owner where I wanted to present the list of all the wrong things and what I wanted to do about it. It all came to a single argument. I'm not happy here, but you need me, so you'll fix these issues and give me a raise, or I'm leaving. And I stood my ground. Recruiter from a big IT company I wanted to work for messaged me on LinkedIn a few weeks prior, and I already went on the interview, so I had an escape plan prepared. The future looked bright and I was ready to make it happen. The day of the meeting came up. I was in a good mood until there was a nasty accident in the workshop. I don't want to post any details as this would identify me in a second, but this is important. I, being the youngest one here, not even responsible for the mess, was tasked with cleaning it up. I had an argument with the workshop manager about me being a programmer and not a radioactive waste cleaning lady, but in the end, I just broke and started cleaning. Halfway through it, almost vomiting from the smell, I just snapped. None of this would happen in a decent IT company. I went to my office, packed my stuff, and just sat there playing games, waiting for the owner. When he showed up, I told him about all the issues. He argued some, but when we got to the end, I just told him that today was the last straw and that I'm leaving right now. I was employed as an independent contractor so they could save some money on taxes, and my contract had nothing about my time there. I just told him that I'll send him the download link for all the files I have, as the contract stated they're owned by the company. He begged me to stay for one more month as they were behind on many deadlines. I just said I'll think about it and left. On my way home, I called the recruiter and told them I accept the job and can start next month. The next day, I made a big archive of about 150 gigabytes of files, backups, etc., and uploaded it to my server and emailed the link to the owner and Tech Senior. I then spent the next 2 weeks in bed watching Netflix and ignoring calls. For the last week, I showed up to help clear some things, hand over my projects, asked about the computers and other stuff I lent them. He told me they'll pay for it, and then left. I was lucky as heck. The next month, Corona happened, and a month later, they were forced to close all the games by the government, making their income go almost zero overnight. This, I believe, was the reason they never paid me for my stuff, even when I repeatedly asked until I got tired of it. Time went by until a few weeks ago when I saw that Tech Senior was looking for a new job. I messaged him and we talked. He told me that they survived by doing private events for companies until they could open again a month ago. All the other tech guys except him were let go, but he managed. Until he got into an argument with the owner. He didn't tell me many details, but the owner either wanted something impossible or expensive as heck. When he presented a cheap alternative, the owner just snapped and fired him on the spot. He tried to reason with him about not firing him until he can teach his successor and find a job in the meantime, but he was fired on the spot. A week later, I got a call from the owner. He hired the younger tech guys he fired during COVID and wanted me to come and answer their questions, mostly about the engine I wrote. I agreed, but as we were planning the meeting, I was suspecting he just wants me to do it for free. When I brought up the hourly rate, he just told me we'll solve that later, hung up, and never called again. The day of the meeting came. I was waiting in my car outside the workshop, waiting to see if he'll call and see where I am, but he didn't. A few days later, I parked next to the warehouse where all the games were held, with a Yagi antenna in my car. Surprise, surprise, the Wi-Fi routers I lent them were still there, with the password unchanged. I connected to the Wi-Fi and poked around the network. All the PCs that I lent them to run the software were still there, still running the Linux server I installed there, and looking at the logs, they were still used to control the games. I wrote a script that runs on boot, rolls a dice, and then deletes the whole drive. I was connected to my Wi-Fi router, making changes to my computer, formatting my drives, then I drove away. Few days ago, I got a call. Apparently, when the Monday shift came in, the control system for one of the games was not responding. The browser was showing timeout. They decided to reset the power for the whole rack where all the PCs were multiple times, hoping it would start up, because turning it off and on again always works. When they decided to stop trying, they found out that all 8 games were dead. The new old tech guys figured out that the drives probably died, but had no knowledge about my system, so they couldn't set it up. When I asked about Tech Senior, the owner made some excuse about him quitting and not wanting to work for them anymore. I told him I was happy to help. In the end, this used to be my dream job, but I now work for a big company. I don't have much time and it's expensive. I can come over to set it up, but my hourly rate is now $150. He talked me down to $100, which was still twice as much as I make now. When I arrived, I checked the PCs, pulled out the email I sent him a year ago, and told him that these serial numbers match these on the labels, and told him I'm happy to find my lost stuff. Grabbed the first PC and took it to my car. We had an argument. I told him that I'm either taking all this stuff or he's paying me something around $2,400. He wanted to call the police, but I had the proof this equipment was mine. He eventually agreed and I got to work. All my software was still in the bit bucket, even with the few modifications Tech Senior managed to make, along with all the config files and scripts with the game workflow that Tech Senior was periodically modifying and backing up, so it was a pretty easy job. I got it all working and then stayed for a few more hours explaining some stuff to the tech guys. I printed the invoice and left. Tired, but satisfied. Yesterday, a nice sum of about $3,600 landed in my bank account. From what they told me, all 8 games were dead for 3 days. Each game cost between $80 and $120, takes 1 hour to finish, and a half hours needed for preparation. So there's 12 slots every day, averaging on $9,600 income per day when fully booked. This, of course, is just the income. Profit after paying all the rent, wages, electricity, consumables used in the games, etc. is much lower, but I didn't know how much. Before Corona, about 80% of the slots were booked during the week and 100% during weekends. I like to think I made him lose $23,000, not counting the angry customers which were forced to reschedule, dollars, just because he was a jerk. If he paid me for my stuff or didn't fire his only tech guy, none of this would have happened. So in your opinion, when OP pulled up alongside the building and used the antenna in their car to connect to the Wi-Fi in the actual establishment, do you think that OP was committing some kind of illegal act here? Now granted, the hardware that was being used did belong to OP, but at the very core of it, that was OP connecting to some establishment's Wi-Fi technically. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. But with that being said, that's a wrap on another edition of Storytime. If you enjoyed this video, if you could subscribe to this channel, it'd mean a lot to me. I make these videos daily, and it's by far and away the best way to support my channel. So no matter what you did, whether it was subscribing or liking, leaving a comment, I just appreciate the heck out of you guys. And as always, I'll be back tomorrow with even more stories right here on the Storytime channel.